Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars and welcome to another of my classic film reviews. Today's classic film review is for the 1987 British comedy Withnail I, a film that is written and directed by Bruce Robinson, and it's almost a semi-biographical picture based on Bruce Robinson's life in the 60s when he lived in a flat with some other people who were in the arts. And it stars Richard E. Grant as Withnail, Paul McGann as I, and Richard Griffiths as Uncle Monty. Now, I've just recently rewatched this with my wife, who, believe it or not, has never seen Withnail I, and it's probably a few years since I've seen this film. It is arguably one of the most quotable films, certainly in British film history, and it is an affectionately well-loved film, certainly in the UK and probably worldwide as well, and it focuses on Withnail and I, played by Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann, who, it's set in 1969, it's coming to the end of the 60s, and they are two unemployed actors who, certainly for Withnail, played by Richard E. Grant, all he cares about basically is alcohol. When his next drink's going to come. They'll live in this hovel of a flat. They've not much to live for. They're not getting much in the way of auditions and things like that, and they decide to go away to the country for a break, and they aim to get the key from Uncle Monty's country cottage to go and have a breakaway in the country. As you can imagine, everything goes terribly wrong, and they get into all sorts of escapades along the way. Right, so what are my thoughts on Withnail I? Well, I think there is certainly a debate to be had as to the greatest comedies of all time, and certainly the greatest British comedies of all time, and this deserves to be in that conversation. It is a flawless film. Like I say, it is endlessly quotable, and for both these actors, Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann, it was their first real major breakthrough roles for both of them, and while they are both brilliant in the film, I mean, Paul McGann's character I is the most grounded of the pair, but that's not saying much. But Withnail, the performance by Richard E. Grant is a powerhouse of a performance. It is one of the all-time greats, and it catapulted his career, and so it should have done. He is remarkable in this film, and many regard his performance as one of the best on-screen performances of a man who is drunk regular ever, which is fascinating, because if you know that, like, some of the facts behind this film, Richard E. Grant is in actual fact allergic to alcohol, so he doesn't actually drink. The director did insist during the making of the film that he got drunk once, just so that he knew what it felt like, which he obliged, which he found useful and fascinating, but it also made him ill. So it is a wonderful performance. For me, this performance by Richard E. Grant and the Dudley Moore performance in Arthur are the two performances I would stand side by side in regards to playing drunks on screen. Richard E. Grant is just hilarious. I mean, they're both very, very funny in this film, but Richard E. Grant is absolutely wonderful, and he comes up with some of the best lines of all time. Things like "We've come on holiday by mistake" is one of the classic lines that he comes out with to the farmer in the pouring down rain. "We've come on holiday by mistake." I mean, it just cracks you up when you hear it. "I demand to have some booze," just after he's rubbed deep heat all over his body to keep warm, because they can't afford to heat the flat, and he ends up drinking lighter fluid. Yeah, it's lighter fluid, because there's no booze left in the house. "Monty, you terrible..." I can't say the rest of it. When Uncle Monty turns up at the country house and they think it's some poacher that is stalking them, and they're absolutely terrified. Incredible stuff. "We want the finest wines in all humanity, and we want them here, and we want them now." all Richard E. Grant lines. I mean, other people get some great lines in this film, but none of them are as effective as Richard E. Grant. Ralph Brown, who plays Danny, iconic role as well, as the guy that just turns up at the flat and smokes cannabis and is one of the best performances in the film as well, and a really iconic character when he threatens to medicine Withnail. It's just great. It's just one of the best films you're ever going to see. If you haven't seen Withnail I, which I was perplexed when my wife said, "Oh, shall we watch one of your?" She calls them retro films, basically older films. So I usually get out a selection of my older films, and then I'll let her choose, because I will have seen them all. And she says, "Oh, I'll do this." One of my friends says it's a really good film, Withnail I. And I'm like, "You haven't seen Withnail?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, oh. It always shocks me when there's a classic film like this that someone hasn't seen. I've been with my wife, well, it's close to 20 years now, and I can't believe we haven't seen it together. But we have rectified that now, and it was a huge success, by the way. She absolutely loved the film. I don't see how anybody couldn't love this film. It is so wonderfully done. There's not a weakness in the film, really, apart from the fact that there's not really much of a story. It's just these two downbeats going on holiday for a big chunk of the film, and that's going to the pub here and there now and again. That's it. There's not really any story here, but it doesn't need it. It doesn't need it because these performances carry it, and the incredible writing by Bruce Robinson, who I think delivered one of the all-time classics here, all-time British classics. And you ask many people, certainly in the UK, maybe probably even worldwide, I'm sure this is affectionately loved all over the world, this film, what they would consider the best British comedy of all time, and this will generally come up in the conversation with most people. So it's a flawless film. I can't give it anything but a 10 out of 10. I couldn't give you a flaw in this film if I tried. It's just too good. It's hilarious. It's an all-time classic. It's timeless. The setting, because I say it's set in the 60s. It's got a brilliant soundtrack to it as well. It feels authentic. It feels grounded and authentic, but unrealistic at the same time, that someone does live like this, with some iconic on-screen performances. So that is my classic film review for Withnail I. Wonderful film, can't compliment it enough, and it is one that you definitely need to check out if you haven't seen it yet. So thank you very much for watching. I will be back with more reviews on Screen Stars very, very soon.